Hello and welcome. My name is Beth Porter, and I am the founder of Earth and Ether, where I run my healing practice using the modality emotional polarity technique. So, today I'm going to walk you through a short video to allow you to understand what you might expect to experience in an EPT session. So, I work with clients long distance or over the phone. So, we either would meet like this over Zoom, or we would meet over the phone. And essentially, the process is based off of 4 overarching steps. So we first begin by understanding what you're here for. So we call this the focus. So step 1 is aligning on a focus. Now, oftentimes people come in with several focuses. And basically, what I do is tune into your body and ask, what do we need to clear today? Where do we need to be focusing today? What will be the most supportive to heal so that the rest of what you are meant to be healing will kind of be initiated from this process. So we put a lot of trust and intention into your body and what your body reveals to us. So aligning on the focus, meaning you could just say, I just feel off. I feel disconnected from myself. And I am feeling really off, or I have a lot of anxiety, or I have some physical pain, or, I have this pattern that is negative that I can't seem to kick, even though I can have awareness around it. I can't seem to change that. So those would be some examples of the focus. That's step 1. Step 2 is to find it. So once we align on the focus, I typically have you do some breathing. So I'll have you put your hands on either side of your head with your feet on the ground, and we will do 6 deep breaths in your nose and out your mouth. We will start by squeezing on the inhale and releasing on the exhale. What this does, and I breathe alongside of you, what this does is gets your right and left brain synced up, talking to one another. It brings you into your body. It helps to settle your nervous system. And then for us, since we are, working remotely, it allows me to sink into and sync up with your body's energy. So from there, I have you do a couple of statements for congruency. And congruency just means that your body believes that this is true. So something that's not congruent would be that your system, your body does not believe it's true. So I have you start by telling me what your name is. So you would say, my name is whatever, and I will muscle test to see what congruency situation we have. And then I have you say, my name is Beth, which is me, and the muscle will go weak. And that will show me that we are not congruent with Beth. You are not Beth. You are not me. It allows me to ensure that I'm in your system's field and working with your energy and not mine. So even though we are long distance and I'm essentially, my system is proxying for you, it allows me to make sure, again, that we're working with your stuff and not mine. So from there, like I said, step 2 is to find it. So we take the focus that you come in with. I take some measurements. I understand on a scale of 1 to 10 what level of distress your body is in relationship to the focus. And then if there's any elation around that distress. So if there is, elation really just means that even though your body is in a high level of distress, if we're seeing elation, then your body is actually happy about, or elated about being in that distress, which usually tells me that there's some kind of secondary benefit for your system to stay in that sort of pattern. So we see this a lot with people who are really attracted to chaotic situations. Your system is not comfortable being at ease, having a settled nervous system, being in an environment that is not chaotic because it has been programmed to actually thrive in chaos. So anyway, we look at distress and elation, and then we move to stages of healing, which are similar to the stages of grief. So we work with 7 stages, where stages of grief are usually 5. So I kind of understand where you are on that, on that scale. Stage 1 is denial. Stage 2 is anger. Stage 3 is bargaining. 4 is depression. Usually we cycle through those 4 stages. The goal for our session is to always get you to stage 5 and above. Stage 5 is acceptance. That's when your system is open to allowing the energy of divine love or life force energy or God energy, whatever you want to call it, whatever you relate to, your natural state of energy that is naturally healing. It allows that to flow through your body. From there, you move into stage 6, which is called light emerging, and then stage 7, which is creation of new life. So again, test this at the beginning and the end of each session to track the progress. These measurements also just give me as a practitioner more information about kind of the underwork, like the inner workings of what's going on here, even before we dive into it specifically. So then I ask you some more statements of congruency, meaning, is your system congruent with these 4 things? So I ask you to say, I am okay to show up. I am okay to pay attention. I am okay to tell the truth, and I am okay to let go. Now, like I said, these things give me more information about this session and what particular energies we're working on. But essentially, at the end of the day, at the end of the session, we test back to make sure that you are congruent with all of those things and that you're in at least stage 5 of healing and above. Then from a distress and elation standpoint, I'm looking to neutralize the elation. And then I'm also looking to drop the distress between like a 1 and a 3 is what I like to see. So then I ask your system how many issues there are in relationship to the focus that you came in. So now we have our picture, and then we bring up the first issue. And by bringing it up, what I mean is that it's kind of like how you might imagine a file on your computer. So I'm basically like clicking in to the file of the first issue, and then it opens up and shows me all the files that are in there, essentially. So basically, I ask your body to bring up the first issue, and then I start to understand who it's about, if it has something to do with you or somebody else, if it has to do with a what or a person. So it could have to do with a person, like a relationship, or it could have to do with something in your life, like your house or your job, or I often see intangible things like your sense of self-respect or sense of safety or sense of time, all of that kind of stuff. So we kind of understand what this is about, and then we further look at where is this held in your body? Where do we need to go to reprogram this interaction that your brain has that it's sending into your body that creates the dynamic that you're currently living in? So I ask, where this is essentially. Is it in your liver? Is it in your gallbladder? Is it in your heart? Is it in your lungs? And then once we find out where we are, I ask specifically what the emotion is. And when I do this, what we're doing is essentially picking up like the nucleus emotion that is connected to other emotions that if we were to remove this from your system to repattern, then it moves out a lot of the like connected emotions as well. So I call them emotional packages, basically. Anyway, we discover what that is. And then I'll just say, okay, what is this about? Why are you feeling your dad's anger? Why is your dad angry right now? Something like that. And you will, because again, we have that file open, you will say, oh, this just happened. He lost, I don't know, I'm making this up, but he just lost a big deal in the stock market. And so essentially you are holding his anger for what happened in his life. And we don't need you to be doing that. So from there, I then ask your body, is there an earlier time that I felt this way for a similar reason? Meaning, is there a root to this emotional pattern in my body? Oftentimes it's a yes. If it's not, we'll just, clear it and move on. And usually we'll go to the next issue. But oftentimes it's a yes. And then I will ask the system, okay, well, when did this start? And so I check to see if it's, from conception to birth. And if it's that, then I look at, was this while you were in the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester? If it's not any of those spaces, then I go from, birth to 1, and then from 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and so on and so forth, until I find the number, the age that we need to land on. So then we do that. And then I do the same kind of, deductive dialogue, again, to find it, because we're still in stage 2, to understand what the emotional story is around that. And then I'll ask you, okay, why was your dad angry? What was going on when you were 5? Why was your dad angry then? And then what happens, which is really crazy, is that usually you'll have a memory that maybe you haven't thought of in a really long time come right to the surface. Oftentimes when there's trauma present, maybe you'll have no memory. And so you'll be like, I don't even really know. I can't think back to that time. That's super common, like I said, especially with trauma, because the trauma brain is trying to protect you from those feelings. And so we'll do a little bit of digging, but until I get a go ahead from your body. Once we land on that, we then address removing that particular emotional pattern. So we're using anger as an example. Basically what I would do, anger lives in the liver or the gallbladder, depending on whichever organ we found it in. I would ask your body, what is it? What do you need to interrupt this pattern? And so we'll identify what that is. I'll have you place your hands in a certain sequence, again, based on what your body tells me, over those organs. So the liver is kind of bottom right rib space. And then another hand, again, based on whatever the sequence is, over your forehead. And what we're doing here is actually applying a specific magnetic charge to like shake up what is happening or what that normal pattern is in the system. So from there, I have you bring your attention to that old memory, and I have you do like a three to four, depends on like how big it is. But I have you take a moment to breathe, and you're interrupting through the controlled breath, you're interrupting the pattern. So we'd be holding there, and I have you take a deep breath in your nose and out your mouth. And we do that 3 more times. And oftentimes, this is where you'll see either me or you yawning, or sometimes we will have coughing or burping, like we've seen lots, or crying, seen lots of different ways of how energy shifts out of the system. But essentially, we're moving the energy and we're interrupting that pattern. So from there, we then see if there are any other emotional packages related to the same story. So the same story of when you're 5 and your dad's angry. So once we get all the packages, sometimes I see like up to like 4 or 5, which usually means that this is like a pretty intense thing that's in your system, a pretty like lodged in memory. Once we release all of that, we then move into the next stage. Oh, we already skipped that. So the breathing is the third stage, which is fixing it. So fixing it is essentially kind of like wiping that, if we're using the computer analogy, like resetting the system so that it's in a neutral state, so that it's not naturally and automatically going to that cycle of distress in your body. Okay, so that's step 3. Step 4 is then to forgive it. And so with this stage, I test your body to see if this like story that we've gone back to is registering as trauma. So we look at if trauma is present, basically that means that for whatever reason, you have coded that event as traumatic in your body, meaning that you were alone, either physically or metaphorically alone, like you felt like you were alone. And the experience of the situation was so overwhelming that your system didn't really know what to do with it. So your brain needed to adjust to be able to help you get through it and help you cope. Now, what's happening is if this is coded as trauma, what is showing up in your present day life is triggering this same sequence. So you're not actually able to operate from like a fully resourced brain body connection. So if it's coming up as trauma, and I say this to everybody I talk to, 90% of my sessions have trauma. So, we all have trauma, big or small, kind of doesn't matter. It does matter in the way that I would approach it. But, if it's little t trauma or big T, it's really just, it's sitting in your system a certain way. Trauma isn't really the event that occurred. It's the way your body is processing what that event means. And what's happening is that you're currently reliving some aspect of that through the lens of the trauma brain. So we look at, is it phase 1 or phase 2? And then we address appropriately. So if it's phase 1, that just means that at the time of the event, the right side of your brain became really overactive and really is just trying to take over. The left side drops out. So it's really like only one half of your brain is working for you, and the right side is like hyperactive, trying to find a viable solution, trying to get you out of trauma, trying to help you make sense of all of the chaos that's around you. This is what we often see with people that are experiencing chronic anxiety or OCD tendencies, et cetera, et cetera. Then Phase two is when the situation was so overwhelming that both sides needed to drop out. And so this looks like numbing yourself. This looks like needing to like disassociate from life, kind of turn on like robot mode. Or like this happens to me a lot when I'm in conversation with people and I'm being triggered into phase two trauma. It's like that moment where you can understand the words someone is saying to you, but you can't really compute what they really mean. Like I get what the words are, but that doesn't, like there's like a block. Sometimes this happens when I'm learning new information because of like my childhood trauma of being in school and getting things wrong. Um, anyway, so we understand, what's happening. Um, how is your system being triggered? And then we approach the trauma from a perspective of keeping everybody feeling safe, allowing your nervous system to be calm, understanding that you're not alone, also understanding that that was then and this is now. We don't need that kind of response to survive, So with that, we address the trauma. And then I lead you through a series of statements that allows you to resolve the previous conflict. So again, we're focusing on that from the example. We're focusing on the conflict at age 5, the unresolved conflict of dad's anger when you're 5 years old. And basically, we would walk through some forgiveness of yourself for believing that it was your fault, for believing that it's your role to manage the emotions of the people in your life, whatever is like specifically part of your story. I'm just kind of giving you some examples here. But we work through forgiving yourself, forgiving the people that are involved, asking for forgiveness from the people that are involved, honoring any like loyalties you might have had to staying connected to operating like your 5-year-old self, honoring any of this situation that needs to be honored so that your brain can safely know, okay, we released this pattern, we interrupted this pattern. I don't have to go back to it. I actually can craft something new. And so then without that pattern, we get to create a different experience in life. And so I walk you through kind of resolving the old conflict, forgiving the situation, forgiving yourself, and then what it can look like for you in the future. Once we do all of that, and usually just from me doing this for so long, I can sense the energy shifting and moving and if there's resistance and all that kind of stuff. So we address all of those things and we come to kind of like a moment of completion. Sometimes during that sequence of statements, you will have like kind of like a breakdown where there's tears, again, yawning. For my male clients, a lot of times it's coughing, but you usually feel something very tangible shift during that time. I have a lot of really sensitive people that I work with who will feel like warmth come up through like their center line or like a bunch of buzzing in their head that like tingles down. Wild stuff, your body will be talking to you during that time. Anyway, once we complete, then I go back and test all of those things that I talked about at the beginning to just mark how much you've shifted and anchor into the truth of that. And then from there, we check in to see if you even need to go to the next issue. So like I said, we check to see how many issues are related to the focus. This morning I did a session, there were 3 issues related to the focus. She ended up getting to stage 7 at the end of the session, and so creation of new life. And we dropped her distress all the way down. She didn't have any elation, but she was congruent with all of those statements, showing up, telling the truth, paying attention, and letting go. And then there was no need to go into the next issue that was related to the focus. So a lot can be shifted in a single session. Many people tell me that it's like 10 years of talk therapy in one session. This has been by far, emotional polarity technique has been by far the quickest, most effective, getting right to the root of the issue, healing modality that I've ever experienced. So anyway, that was me wanting to just kind of, share a little bit about what you might expect on a session. Now, if we are working on Zoom, I offer folks to turn off their camera when we're doing statements in case you want to have kind of your own space to release. Not everybody likes the idea of someone watching them just cry. especially if we are meeting on Zoom, for the first time. So plenty of clients do that. When I receive EPT, I actually just do it over the phone and I'm in my own safe space and it helps me to drop in. So that's an option too, but I work with you and what you need. And yeah, so somewhere in this video below or above, wherever this is being shared, because I'm going to be sharing it in multiple places, there will be a link to book your free consult with me. If you want to talk about what you're specifically working with or what you feel blocked by, or if you have more questions about the process and how EPT might be able to help you, please sign up for that. And then I'll also have a link to book your first session, which is risk-free. I believe in this work so much that I'm offering, up to 48 hours after your session. If you're like, this is really not for me. I didn't feel anything, nothing changed, whatever. And you want a refund, I will happily refund the session. So I hope this lands well. I hope that this is helpful. I get a lot of people that are afraid to try this. And so my intent here is to kind of demystify some of the stuff that just feels so unknown. This process is a combination of science and the etheric, unseen spiritual realm. And so I think, those two spaces coming together can be a little unsettling for some people, which is understandable. So, all right, be in touch.